All right, dude. Well, here we are. Sometimes we do some pretty heavy stuff on this podcast. You know, we've done some pretty newsy news. We've done some very photography based podcasts, like getting into the nitty gritty. You know, but today we're gonna have some fun. We're going. The podcast is always fun. I don't want to. We start with a song. We start with a song, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. So
That's true.
Like name me a podcast that's more fun than this. But this one's gonna be extra fun, extra exciting, because we're gonna just talk about a video game today. We're just gonna chill. We're gonna talk about a video game. There's not gonna be anything, dramatic or that's depressing or hard hitting. Really, penetrating your psychology. You don't have to worry about anything. We're just gonna play a video game. It's just gonna be cool. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun and great. And the video game that we're talking about, here we go. I'm gonna make Michael frickin'
Say it again.
say it again.
Try to say it again. Umurangi.
Umurangi generation. Yeah.
Hey, there we go.
Not Umurangi. I would have called you if you said Umurangi generation. On that one, but it's a really fun game. I've played through the entire game. Didn't get a chance to get to the DLC, unfortunately, so you'll have to forgive me for that one. Michael played through quite a bit of it, and we'll get into a little bit, but it's been like just to give you guys a little bit of my personal experience. I don't even know how I guess I was just like searching photography gained for this podcast. One of the good reasons to have a podcast, gets you doing stuff like that, gets you doing cool things like that. And I found this game. At the time, it was like super cheap on Steam, like ridiculously cheap. So, and it still is really cheap. I think it's like $17 right now. And just loved playing through this game. Loved the experience. It's not perfect, obviously. We'll get into it. It was basically made by one guy, and it took him he did it, most of it in like 8 months, and then just like had his buddy kind of do the music and whatever, right? So he like programmed it and designed it and everything. So, learning that really increased my enjoyment of the game a lot more. And I've just really I really enjoyed how expressive it was. I really enjoyed how much of a singular perspective that it has. It was just, it's just a really well done thing. And, I've been getting more into video games recently, kind of took a big break from that and, did other stuff, focus on a lot of, playing guitar, make YouTube videos and stuff like that. But really coming back to gaming, and especially like in the indie scene, or even, older games that are a little bit overlooked, or, maybe might not be the shiniest game, maybe it's not like the new friggin' Dark Souls nice game or whatever, right? But it's great, and there's so much to video games, and especially in the indie scene, interesting things going on that you don't really get in other forms of entertainment, right? Where it's somebody's a real view into somebody's head, someone's life. So super cool. What was your kind of experience with it, man?
Yeah, man. I love that Steam carries these kinds of games. Like you talked about, kind of the indie feel. Yeah. Definitely love that. I think some of the things I liked, and I think I agree with everything that you said, but just the simplicity of the game makes it an easy game to jump into, and to understand right away, and to kind of just to play through. If you have the time, you can just play this thing through. It does get more difficult, which is nice. You kind of want that challenge. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on. But I think when I talk about the simplicity of the game, it's not even just the visuals, but it's which of course are a bit simplistic. When again, we were talking about Dark Souls, we're talking about, those kinds of games. Definitely not a Frostbite engine behind this guy.
Yeah,
but
you don't need a PS5. You definitely.
Yeah, it's not. You don't need a PS5 to run this for sure. You can probably run whatever you had for your Windows 98 setup. Mm-hmm. But I think just the objectives are simple. And if, again, it progresses, but I think it's more so in the concept of it. Just look for these things and capture them the way you're instructed to. with a wide, with a telephoto, be close by, be nearby. It's simple to understand. I don't need to like look up a wiki and like and like figure out what like half of these things
program
mean.
A bunch of macros and, you know, get a whole team of people together, level up your character. You know, there's really none of that type of thing. Yeah.
I think, yeah, the last thing I just wanted to note here is, yeah, I love the visuals. Like, actually, I think there's a place for this, and we're gonna talk about that, I think, a bit more when we dive a bit more into it. But yeah, I love a game that understands like, this is the canvas I have. Like, how do we make it as pretty as possible? Obviously, Minecraft does that. And that's probably one of the most successful games of all time. So yeah, interested to kind of hear about some of the things maybe you disliked about the game, Jared.
Oh, it's it's perfect.
It's perfect. Oh my
no notes.
Goodness.
No notes. Game's perfect. Okay, let's get into it. So, Umurangi Generation is a first-person photography video game. It's a first-person shooter, I guess, in a sense, but not a lot of violence in it, which is refreshing. It was published by Playism, and it was developed basically, as I hinted to earlier, by one person in like 8 months in 2020. So I don't know. Try to think back, whatever your response was to the pandemic. I mean, I wrote some music and stuff like that. I wasn't like completely unproductive, but this guy made a whole video game. So we made some podcasts. We did a
podcast. Yeah.
But yeah, it was all thanks. This whole video game experience was all thanks to this guy, the director of the game, Tal E. Faulkner, and he is a Maori individual, which I guess is the indigenous people of New Zealand. Like, I don't really know very much about this, but pretty cool to learn a little bit through this video game. Mm-hmm. It was published on PC in May 2020. And it was also released on the Nintendo Switch eventually, which is really cool. So if you have a Nintendo Switch, and we'll get into it, but I think this game would be great on Switch. June 2021. So, you know, about a year later, putting it out on the Nintendo Switch. And the game is set in the shitty future. That's the Tally's Tally's words, not mine. Yeah, it's a very incredibly indie game. One thing that he did do very well is using the Unity engine. I think that was a really good play. Some people try to like make their own game engines, and like he just used a popular one. You know, now that I know a little bit about video games, that's kind of like a good standard practice. Is like, it'd be like, I guess, if me and Michael like tried to invent our own Audition and our own Zoom to do this podcast. Yeah. Right, you wouldn't want to do that. Let's get a little bit into the gameplay here, man. After I yapped on, nerded out here a little bit about the kind of history of this game.
Yeah, for sure. So I think for gameplay, I mean, this kind of captures a couple of the dislikes. I think it's just like, it's a little choppy. It's a little choppy, and it is glitchy at times. If you find yourself like too close to an object, trying to double jump to get on top of it, sometimes you'll just shoot like to Mars. Joking around, but you'll shoot up real high. There's some glitches, as Jared has mentioned before, not on the podcast, but you know, just in conversation. You can use that to your advantage sometimes.
Launch onto that roof, get that perfect shot.
Exactly. You know, there are going to be moments where you can, you know, it doesn't recognize an object as really being in the way. You can shoot through it to get, you know, all of the subjects or items that you need to get within the frame for that objective in the frame, and it's going to count. So those kinds of things, I mean, you have to, you know, bring those up. But again, I appreciated how easy like the gameplay mechanics were.
Yeah, it's very familiar. I was very quickly able to pick it up and play it. I do play a lot of like first-person shooter style games. Like I've been playing tons of Portal. I used to play like a lot of Counter-Strike and stuff like that. So very intuitive for me, like that first-person style with the mouse and keyboard. You know, the WASD. You know, very familiar to me. So yeah, there's all of that. I also found it very similar to a game that I played tons, which is Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Like I could play Tony Hawk Pro Skater with my damn eyes closed, bro. So where it's objective based, right? That's kind of the big like thing that's similar. Each level is like a kind of mini sandbox, and you go around and explore the level, and you have like different objectives. In Tony Hawk, it used to be like, oh, you got to grind from this rail to this rail, or you know, do this gap, collect these letters, these different objectives. Like very similar to that type of game. So if you've played any like Tony Hawk or kind of objective based games like that, you know, it's going to be something that's not too weird, something that you'll be able to pick up pretty easily. Yeah, instead of like doing wicked tricks, you basically have photos that you have to get, right? So it'll be like, get a photo of 3 birds, or get a photo of like all your friends together in a photo, or like just different things that you have to find. Some jukeboxes, spray paint, all types of cool, rebellious crap like that, right?
Yeah.
So it's very, very, yeah, just very familiar and very easy to pick up. And another thing that is pretty cool about this game is like the focus on creativity. It never tries to like force you to play in a certain way. As I said, the levels are like sandboxes, right? It is timed, but like the timing isn't really that important. It's like if you want to deliver on time, it's very much like being a real photographer, right? You're just like, oh, I'm just kidding. It's like any clients are just like, okay, well, I don't call this guy. No,
we deliver that podcast Jared has.
Yeah, Michael and I, yeah, and then they hear me do the crazy. Oh, that song wasn't bad. It wasn't one of my worst, anyways. But go listen. If you want to hear a good song, last week's the Rush one was freaking solid. But I actually have a quote here on like the creativity and kind of the focus on creativity, how that was designed into the game, from Tally here. The moment you tell someone what is and isn't creative, you just essentially stop them from being creative.
Ooh, that's powerful.
Yeah, and that was kind of true. That was really the philosophy of the game. Like you have those objectives, right? But like the way that you do it is totally up to you, and you have like full control of how you want to edit those photos. Especially as you progress in the game, you get like more and more control, more and more lenses and stuff like that. A couple more things that I want to highlight here, and then we'll let Michael kind of talk about it a little bit more about like his experience with the gameplay. But I totally loved how the different lenses are kind of designed into the game. The way that they're like introduced over time slowly, that was something that I really, really liked. The control that you do have, like Michael and I talked about it, like you don't have full manual control. I think that might be a really scare a lot of people away from this game, but apparently it is something that they have in the DLC. So once you've played through the game and you're like familiar with the mechanics, you do get that control. But yeah, having the control over like switching those lenses, it really made me like envy that as a photographer. Like I kind of wish that in real life it was like that, where you want to switch lenses and you just like turn your lens, boom, click, just click it, and it just becomes a zoom lens. Yeah, you don't have to carry around lenses and stuff like that. That would be really cool. We'll talk a lot about the inspiration behind this game as well. Like obviously this genius game didn't come from absolutely nowhere. So one big point of inspiration here is the tactical shooter Arma. Apparently is something that Tally really was inspired by in this game. So I guess it's a shooter where you have to, you know, really dial things in and whatnot, right? Like more of a simulator than like, you know, your average thing. And yeah, like I said, he made it like in about 8 months. And originally it was just to teach his brother about, or his cousin. Yeah, his cousin. Photography brothers, that's why I wanted to say that. But the point of the game was to teach his cousin about photography. And yeah, we'll get into that a little bit more later, but I think that the game really does do that. Like, and from some of the reviews that I've read, it's like getting people into photography, which I really like. But yeah, any other things on the gameplay that you either like enjoyed or didn't enjoy?
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's funny you use this word, and for some reason it didn't strike me until now. But yeah, it is a simulator. It's a photography simulator. When you watch friends or streamers that you like playing, the truck simulators and stuff like that, it's you have an objective or a set of objectives, you got to go and do it, and it's very specific and tailored to a specific profession, and that is exactly what this is. So as a good descriptor, yeah, definitely a simulator. But as far as gameplay goes, yeah, I mean, the thing that really struck me, again, I actually really like the art style in this game. I like how every map felt completely different from the map previous to it.
That's true.
Right. I liked how, you could interact with your friends that kind of came along with you on all these crazy adventures, I guess, and you could kind of get them to pose and do different things and, kind of get the shot that you want to get. And I'll definitely bring that up a bit more later as well. But honestly, I feel like it's one of those games where for me, it's kind of hard to say a lot about it other than just it was simple and fun and beautiful, honestly. I think, yeah, the shooting manual for me actually is probably something that for me, I don't think it would have scared me off. I mean, it could scare off definitely like a beginner who just kind of wants to go in and shoot and not have to worry about that, or someone who's a hobbyist or not really just wants to play the game. But I think as a resource, and that's something we'll talk about later on, it might have been nice. But again, like Jared mentioned, it is available through DLC, so you can get that. But yeah, and
it's a super cheap game. It's like a super cheap game. Like you can get the game and the DLC for under $40. I'm pretty sure right now on Steam.
Yeah, so. and if you use the code PHOTOBROS, you'll get 0% off.
Yeah, they'll absolutely nothing.
Do nothing. You'll say this is an incorrect code.
Oh, I love that, man. That's awesome. Okay, so I also want to talk a lot about hopefully not too much. We don't want to make this too long, but I want to talk about the music for sure. I think that's very integral to the vibe of the game. Like that is one thing that kept me coming back to this game, and like I had to go and find the best like Bluetooth speakers that I could find in my house and like set it up every time, And it was definitely a game where I wanted to get the vibe right to play it. Like Michael talks about all the time, like when you're editing your photos, you want to be in a certain place. You want to listen to certain music. A lot of artists definitely talk about this, right? Like getting into that proper headspace and kind of recognizing that like what you're creating is going to be intertwined with like, obviously, it sounds obvious when you say it, but like your mindset at the time of creating it, or, your inspiration at the time of creating it, right? And this game does a very good job of like the music, everything brings you into a vibe. It really got me like, okay, I'm going to turn off the lights. Let me get my nice keyboard set up. I'll make a tea, like really like kind of lean into the experience of it, right? And really get yourself in the zone to do it, which was part of it that I really loved. The music is done by this guy, Thor High Heels. I really hope it's a guy, because like I don't know. Now that I read the name, somebody named Thor High Heels, and it was just like a friend of Tally's, of the developer here. He basically reached out to him, saw his like stuff on YouTube or whatever. He's like a music producer, and he was like, hey, can I use some of your stuff on the game? And I think like I read a little bit of interviews with Thor High Heels and also with Tally, and kind of seems that it was just like a very organic thing where like Tally was already kind of using that music as a bit of an inspiration, kind of digging it, like throwing it on YouTube, and then ended up reaching out to him. So kind of the whole game seems like, although some of the tracks were pre-existing and some of the tracks were actually made for the game, it just blends in pretty seamlessly. The whole thing feels very natural and like just a good marriage, right? Like to me, it's like, it's funny in a game that is kind of like clunky and does have its like little it's his first game. That's another thing, right? But it does have those things. But in terms of like, it manages to still be a pretty seamless experience in some ways. So I'm saying the word experience a lot, but it's an experience.
It is an experience. The whole thing is an experience.
Yeah.
You know, it's. I agree with you. The music. You took the words right from my mouth here, man. I was about to say, like, you know, as creatives, you tend to, you know, lean on other art forms to fuel your creativity. And yeah, like, for sure, music is something that, you know, Jared, me, like, we'll listen to when we're editing our stuff. You know, it helps you put you in that headspace. I like, again, due to the game being so simple in nature, it allows you to be really immersed within it without having to really think too much. And you can really absorb, you know, what you're seeing, what you're hearing. And again, what you're hearing, I mean, every map has something that really just feels right for what's going on. And so, yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, man. Like, beautiful score. I'm someone who, like, I'm kind of a nerd this way, but I'll see like Hans Zimmer's on a film and I'll be like, oh my God, I am so stoked. Or, you know, somebody else from one of the countless crap short films that I've seen, I've been like, wow, the movie was bad, but the score was great, and kind of keep track of those composers. And I'd love to see Thor High Heels come up and something else down the line, for sure. I'd definitely get excited.
And it's sick how this is coming together. Like, I didn't really think about this earlier, but as you were saying, like, the variety of environments, and like down to not just kind of how it's laid out and like the types of objectives that you're doing, but also like the lighting environments and things are very different in different areas. And that kind of goes along with the music being dynamic as well. Like, every track isn't exactly the same, right? And there are, like, we don't want to spoil too much, but there are some like more dramatic moments in this game, and how, you know, just dynamic that music is. The fact that it's not just, it would still be a fun game. Like, they could have literally used friggin' Wi-Fi or lo-fi beats to chill playlist from YouTube, and the game would still be good, right? But like, the fact that they went that other level, got Thor High Heels here involved. I've been putting on the soundtrack and doing like photo walks. It has like inspired me to do some more photo walks. Like, I am pretty inspired by that. And like, found it on Spotify, throw it on, and it's kind of like, it does help with the immersion and whatnot. So just wanted to throw that out there too.
That's awesome. For art style, I feel like I've used a lot of these. I've used points and just like everywhere here as we've talked about the game. Just kind of like really excited about the game. But yeah, I think like it's simple, but I used this phrase before. It's not like it's not the canvas. It's how you use it, how you paint it. And they made a really beautiful game. Jared referenced lighting. They used lighting really well here, even in ways that challenge you, and like, not to go too much into like objectives and stuff like that. I just kind of stay a bit more creative, like Jared mentioned. Like, some of the shots I just wanted to get because I wanted to get them, and there's like I think there's a shot like 3 or 4 levels in. It's like a battlefield, right? And there's this guy on top of a roof, and he's shooting, and it's really dark, but once he shoots, you get the muzzle flash and it illuminates, right? And I'm like, I was sitting there for a while just trying to get it, and he would like stop shooting. I'm like, no, I'm not getting the shot I want. But you know, there are times in the game where it makes you have to do that, but there are times in the game where you just want to, and it just, because it's stunning. It doesn't have to be an objective. It just, as a creative, it's something you want to get, and it just speaks a lot to, I think, how beautiful the game is.
And I would end up getting objectives accidentally like that sometimes, where I would just be like, all right, let me just shoot around, and then it's like, oh, I got an objective.
That's so true.
There was three birds and 4 feathers in that shot. I was just shooting around.
Yeah, I know. Oh my goodness. Side note, the hardest one I think for me was finding the targets. I was like, where are the targets?
Oh yeah, that targets
that was ridiculous.
One is hard.
Yeah,
it's like level 4 or 5 or whatever. But yeah, the art style, as Michael said, it's like pretty minimalist. If you've ever played like PlayStation 1 games or like N64, it kind of like does remind me of that aesthetic a little bit. We'll get into inspirations here as well. Like we want to talk about inspirations. Jet Set Radio is one that comes up a lot, which is a game that I think I would love. I never got the chance to play it back in the day, but it was like Dreamcast or something. it's a skate graffiti game, like inline skates. You like skate around and graffiti, and it kind of has a similar art style to this game. So definitely an art style inspiration. Another thing is the work of, oh boy, here we go, bad pronunciation time, Yoji Shinkawa, who worked on Metal Gear Solid. And I definitely saw that. Now that, like, once you hear some of this stuff, you're like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. So a big inspiration was that the kind of minimalist art of Metal Gear Solid definitely comes into like the graffiti and stuff in this game. So thought that was pretty cool. But I did I think that the art aesthetic like works well with everything in the game. It does avoid like this game could have very easily been like super boring.
Yeah.
Which I feel like, you know, when you set out to make a photography video game, like that's always something I guess that would be a risk. But this all comes together very, very well, and it ends up being something that's very enjoyable, and yeah, kind of like tricks you almost into like you getting better at photography and like thinking more about how you're framing your photos. Are you creating a lot of depth? Like it just gives you a chance to like practice and run through a lot of things where like street photography in real life, like people aren't just kind of standing around, right, and posing and waiting for you to get that shot. You gotta like kind of okay and like shoot some stuff, boom boom boom. Yeah. This guy's turning, he's looking at this sign, let me shoot that. This guy's on a motorcycle, shoot that, whatever, right? And kind of figure it out. But it is a cool little playground to mess around with, you know. And yeah, the art style really does play into all of those things, like how you're saying the focus being on creativity and everything like that, just it being an enjoyable game. Like the girl who got me my glasses when I went to the glasses store, picked up some new glasses. I'm not wearing them yet, and that's why Michael's raising an eyebrow, but she kept saying when I put on glasses, she'd be like, that's vibey. So this game's
it's vibey.
This game's very vibey.
Yeah, I think the last point I just want to make there to like build off of that is I think it's the reason that it didn't really strike me as a simulator at the time. Like it was, to me, it was just a game because yeah, I mean, like the art, there's so much like intention with the art style. Like you can tell, again, obviously simplicity. I hate using, I feel like I've used that word a lot. You know, Jared's using experience, I'm using simplicity. But I love how exciting it was when a map would end, a mission would end. And it was like, where are we going in the story after this? And what is it going to look like? It was like you knew that the next map was going to be, you know, you finish at the battleground. Now you're kind of like around like the medics and people are being treated, and like it continuously progresses through that story. And I think that's kind of what set this game apart from like a generic or like a typical simulator, is that there actually is, like Jared had mentioned, a plot, and visually it, you know, I'd say the visuals are a character along the ride with you, and it keeps you excited for the next one.
It's incredibly well done, like that aspect of it. The game does have a story, and it just gets so seamlessly told to you. Like there's no freaking cutscenes. There's no like you go up to a character and you press it. Like this game could have had these elements that would have just like distracted from the core thing, which is like getting into a mood and taking cool photos and like being experimental, moving that frame around, adjusting that focus, like editing with cool colors and stuff like that. Yeah, it completely avoids that, which is great.
It purely relies, actually, like it's funny, we're talking about art style, we're talking about the story. The game purely relies on art style to tell you the story. Yeah. It purely relies on the objectives that you do and the graffiti on walls and the things around you to tell you what the heck is actually going on. No one tells you. There are no cutscenes. There's no voice in the sky, no written bio. There's nothing going on. You get dropped in and okay, I guess these guys aren't great. Okay, well, wow, I guess people feel like this, you know, like
really, really hard to not spoil, eh? I'm trying to avoid it. I'm trying.
Really hard.
But
yeah,
there's
awesome.
some crazy stuff going on. Yeah.
There's some crazy shit.
Yeah, man. That's kind of segueing, talking about the story and whatnot, segues very nicely into talking about the themes, which I do want to get into a little bit here. Kind of the ideology of this game, I guess you could say, which I didn't really like. I honestly didn't expect this game to have this much of a voice, and kind of these themes that, like Michael is saying, without shoving it down your throat, without a word of dialogue, without anything like that, no cutscenes, it expresses this entire thing, right? And the whole thing is around, anti-war, anti-colonialism, anti-neoliberalism as well, which is something that I totally wasn't expecting out of this game in any way. It really reminded me, it's funny, the relationship between this and real world photography, especially some of those levels where it's really neon lighting a lot and a lot of police and stuff around, really reminded me heavily. And then interwoven with these themes of anti-colonialism, anti-police, all of these things, right? Andrew Hallahan, who we covered on the show, you guys can definitely go look up his photography on Instagram or his website, taking photos of the police and expressing that a very similar feeling that I got from playing this game of otherworldliness and all of this bad stuff that's going on and how it's being reacted to,
100%. Yeah, I don't know if I could say it better than the way you just said it, but yeah, I like how the kind of the culture and character that they create in the city and in the different environments kind of give you an idea of how the people that live in that area feel about what's going on and feel about kind of the direction, and there's rebellious people, there are folks that are kind of along for the ride and fighting, there's anyways, the point is yeah, it's definitely tackling a lot of stuff. And again, I know we've talked about this, I just love how they're not how, even though they're tackling things that can be complex, they're doing it in such a way that is just immersive, and you can kind of uncover that for yourself, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I have a little more detail here around specifically what Tali was thinking about making this game. It's a response to the Australian government, obviously their handling of COVID, but also their handling of the bushfires. There's tons of crazy bushfires in Australia that we don't even really hear about, right? It's a whole world away, basically, and sadly, we don't really hear stuff about that. I was even surprised when I heard this news about BC or whatever, how they're having crazy landslide situations. Yeah. But it all ties together. Quote from Tali here, the government's shithouse job of handling the bushfires and the pandemic, and yeah, that criticism of neoliberalism and how. This really woke me up, man. Honestly, I know that sounds cliche perhaps, but I've been thinking about this a lot. How we're just kind of, this stuff gets normalized, right? And how quickly things are spun, and how quickly someone will be oh, I can make money off of this. And these ads that were coming on TV right away when the pandemic, and it's how long did it take people to be oh yeah, such and such, it's such a hard time. The new BK spicy burger is out, it's oh, you soothe you can't work and you're poor now, but get a BK at BK, it's your way or whatever.
Yeah.
And how those things become normalized, right? And yeah, he has another quote here that I really love, and it ties in as well with some of his inspirations for the game. One of the things about neoliberal political system is it's all about making you comfortable in the face of things that are trying to kill you. And he brings up the film Shin Godzilla and kind of the Godzilla franchise in general, but especially Shin Godzilla in particular. And that idea of a problem being like so right in your face that it's like a giant monster that's like smashing up the city, right? And you're just like either kind of ignoring the problem, going to BK, or like arguing about it, right? Like these like diplomats are friggin' these people are elected whatever people in the UN, and all of these things that people want to criticize, kind of like this is such a political science episode now, damn, some of these words, like the like superstructure of neoliberalism or whatever you want to call it, right? Like kind of observing that.
I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready for neoliberalism. Just hit me right away.
I know this game kind of slaps you with that, right? But yeah, how things are developing, and like especially the response to COVID and to climate change really reveals like what's going on, and the ignoring of the problem that's right in your face. Interesting stuff like that you don't expect playing a little photography game again.
Could it get people into photography though, Jared?
Okay, let's
That's
talk
the
about
question.
that. Yeah. Okay. Well, we got creative. We can get a bit practical.
Yeah. So, could it get people into photography? Want me to kick off this one?
Go ahead, bro. Yeah.
I think yes. I think the game is stunning. It's simple to play, but it challenges you in a lot of ways that are relevant to photography. Which could maybe plant the seed for a lot of folks that kind of give the game a shot. It's I guess like kind of to echo all of what I just said there in a few simple points. Like it's simple and it's immersive and it's like beautiful. And I think that like because the mechanics are all built around this profession and the different lens systems and not lens systems but like the different lenses and type of shots you can get and all that, and those are such an integral part of the objectives.
Editing you can do.
Editing you can, of course, yeah. I mean, we haven't even talked about the editor. That's so true. But yeah, the whole game is built around it. So of course, like there's that opportunity for people to kind of get interested and even kick off as a hobbyist. But I think because it's a good game, it really kind of gives it that boost that it needs in order to have that effect.
Yeah, I've been sharing this around with quite a few people. I think like anyone who is interested in photography, a big part of what we try to do here on the podcast is like break down those barriers to entry, right? Those like snooty photographers that say things like, "Oh, you don't have 70 megapixels? Go home," right? As if there's people that do that. But anyways, we don't want to be like that, and I think this is a really good way to get into photography, like to practice around. The stakes aren't very high. You're not going to be spending a lot of money or breaking any cameras or anything like that. It's a good little kind of sandbox to play around in. I would highly recommend that you check out this game. Like it will teach you the fundamentals of photography, as Michael was saying, like maybe not that manual mode as much, like ISO and aperture, until you play through the game and then get the DLC, and then then you can play through those other levels and kind of utilize that stuff. But yeah, as a entry point into photography and a way to introduce people to photography, I love this. Yeah.
Would it help to make someone a better photographer?
That one, you guys may have kind of picked up on this, but Michael and I like this game a lot, and I think this game will make you a better photographer. I honestly do. I like I said, I think I've laid it out here. Like this inspired me in a lot of ways with my own photography, something that I am guilty of, and like I talked to Michael about this before, but like as people who host a photography podcast, we're kind of always in danger of like talking about photos more than actually shooting photos. And this game was something, ironically, you're like, oh, you're shooting photos in a video game, but it did inspire me more to like get out and do photo walks and stuff like that in real life, and like in my own nerdy way, putting on the soundtrack and my earbuds there, walking around and shooting like that, and just kind of ignoring the world and just being that like street photographer. I think that it will definitely improve even seasoned photographer skills, and like even people that fly planes and stuff like that. They've got simulators on their computer and stuff like that. Maybe they don't critique neoliberalism as well as this game, but
yeah, I agree 100%. I think if it at least does one thing, it inspires you at the least. Even for myself, like Jared mentioned, definitely resonate with everything that he said. And for me, I got to go out this earlier this week and kind of just take on a project I've been wanting to do for a while. Completely creative. It's completely for me. No real end goals with it, but that's kind of like what you fall in love with in the beginning. And yeah, it was awesome, and I was excited. And maybe next time I'll put the soundtrack in my ear, because it is a really good soundtrack.
On Spotify. Just search Thor High Heels on Spotify there. Okay,
I'm gonna have to look that up. I do think it does make you a better photographer, though. Like, for one, composition, obviously, like we joking around, like there are ways to cheat the system a bit, but like, yeah, I mean, you have to, 80% of the objectives I'd say in the game are like composition, get these 2 subjects in frame, get like 7 birds in frame. It's the first mission, so it's not really much of a spoiler. A lot of it's timing. There's something that has to do with cats, and you got to like wait for kind of like, I think one of the cat kind of moves around. It's not really technically in frame. And so you got to like time things out really well. And of course, from a creative standpoint, as I mentioned earlier, just wanting to like get the shots, and part of the objectives, the bonus objectives, are getting money. So you do have to get extra shots aside from the shots that are part of the objectives if you want to hit that. So getting your creative shots, and me trying to get that muzzle flash guy, that's timing. Right?
Yeah, one thing that it does do that is a lot like real photography. Like, one of my favorite things about this game is it does recreate that thing of like getting into the perfect position at the perfect time to get that photo. And like, I think that's part of the obsessive like artist photography kind of brain that you and I, unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, have, is that we have that need to get that perfect photo. And like, we'll do anything, like dangerous stuff, running through traffic and all types of nonsense, getting into positions, climbing stuff, like whatever you need to do, maybe embarrassing yourself publicly.
That's so true.
I mean, I do that whether or not I have a camera, but
he's just walking around playing his music for the world and stuff. So just joking. So actually, point there,
yeah, I'm a bard. I walk around with my acoustic guitar and I sing photography songs to everybody.
I was gonna say, it's actually funny because like there were moments in this where it's like, I get like a large amount of objects or people in frame, and it reminded me a lot of like, Jared, you'll remember, and I don't know if we can use client names or whatever, but we had a project recently and we had to get like a bunch of like subjects in the same shot, and like the lighting was aggressive, so we had to move people around.
Man, we can talk
like,
about that.
Okay, yeah. So we were shooting University of Toronto
their kitchen staff. Yeah,
their kitchen staff.
We had to get the whole staff in one photo, and it was just like 2:00, like the worst possible light, and we were like right in front
clouds.
Of Nathan Phillips Square, like as open as possible. Yep, that's just a setting.
Sun was just like scorching everybody. It was bright. So we had to like play around a lot with composition, play around with like attention to detail and lighting and all that. So it was funny because like that was just something that kind of came up as I was like trying to squeeze 7 birds into a frame. But I think like one thing I mentioned earlier, and it's like it's such a smaller thing, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was kind of like intentional for this reason. But like I love the fact that you could interact with your friends, and I said that before, but like being able to change their poses, that's something that's really important actually.
And one of your friends is a penguin, which is sick.
I know. I love that the penguin was there, and I kept like, I remember in the first couple missions I was looking at the objectives and I'm like, I don't get it. The penguin has nothing to do with the theme or to do with the flippin' objectives. Like, why is the penguin here? But it's the thumbnail image for the game or whatever, the shortcut image.
There's some symbolism related to the Maori, which is like something about birds and whatnot. So there's a bird symbolism thing going on.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, I mean, like a big part of photography is being able to actually communicate with your models in order to get the shot that you want. So I mean, I'd take that like fairly literally. Like if you're not liking what you're kind of getting, I'd like in practice try to actually change their poses, go up, hit the button. What's up?
It's just very literal. I'm just picturing someone like actually doing that to models. Just like because you just like point at them. You're like, press E and you point, and then they just like change their pose or start dancing. It's just like real life.
They text you later. How come you sent me like 20 texts saying E? I don't understand. Why don't you change your pose, man? But yeah, like I like how it kind of like instills that mindset into newer photographers of like communicating with your models and
out on the street,
shot you want.
Yelling E and pointing at strangers.
Oh my god, that'd be so funny. They would run, I think.
They would run. I mean, I already freak people out enough when I do my street photography. So
there is one knock. I got to give a knock to this game. Okay.
Well, you knocked it. We knocked it.
I did knock it. I did knock it. No. There's one objective. I'm just gonna say one word, and I'm hoping that you get it. Okay. Yeah. Boomer.
Okay, yeah, that was a weird one, I think, because it said like boom and then somewhere else.
And then it was like a different word that was next to it that started with ER.
Yeah.
And it was like I spent like half an hour looking for boomer.
That may have been one of the ones
on my timeline.
May have been one of the ones that I got accidentally because I was just like, this is cool graffiti. I want to use the bloom and shoot it. Yeah, the one that. Oh, dude, the one that kicked my ass was the red light one. If I say that, you might know.
The red light. So is that 3 or 4?
On the train.
Oh.
Maybe you didn't even get there. Did you get there? I don't know.
I think that's
the train.
Next.
Have you been on the train level?
So train, is that separate from like? That's not the one right after?
It's a burger train. It's a burger train. Yeah, it's right after the battlefield, and they're serving up burgers, and you have to shoot all the flags. Yeah, the red light one.
I'm starting that one.
Okay,
so that's where I'm at right now. Yeah.
Good luck with that red light.
Jeez, man. The last one kicked my ass.
There's a really important question that we need to get to before we can wrap up the podcast here.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
And this has been thrilling and exciting, and let's maybe talk about a video game again. It would be very repetitive if we did the DLC, so we're not going to do that. Maybe we will. I don't know. Probably not. But we'll do another I don't know. Hit us up on Instagram. _bros_pod if there's another photography based video game. Maybe you've played it, maybe you think it's interesting, maybe you want us to cover it, maybe you think it's horrible. Let us know. But before we can wrap up here, Michael, and leave our listeners to go and message us on Instagram, we need to ask an important question. So that is,
oh my goodness,
what does Umurangi generation mean?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, I can tell you without even spoiling.
Okay.
So the language of the Maori is Te Rio, probably saying that wrong, and and Umurangi means red sky. So it's the red sky generation. Definitely something to do with like the apocalypse, right? Like the Umurangi generation, that's kind of like us as photographers, right? Like young photographers expressing ourselves in the world. Like that's who this game is for, who it's dedicated to, is the Umurangi generation.
That's interesting because you brought up the fact that like it partially, they're tying in like forest fires and how it's been handled, and like you know how like I've seen images of Australia, of California even. The smoke gets intense and it like really populates the air, and then you have the warm fire and the whole like area around you is just red. So it's interesting. I mean, I don't know, that it could be a coincidence or just like a wink.
Makes perfect sense, dude.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Sense. Yeah. So it's heavy, a little bit of heavy stuff. We found a way to make it heavy a bit.
At the end, very
covering
counted,
a damn video game. We did it, Michael. But it is hopeful. Like if the problem here being addressed by this game, very very eloquently, is that the current system in charge of the world is fundamentally ill-equipped to deal with the problems that we have, and they're basically ignoring it. And if we're not able to talk about that frankly, then we're basically effed, Michael.
Yeah.
So this is an important thing. And for as artists, I think like the message here is like, go hard. Like this guy made a whole game. So if you can't shoot some photos and put them on a website, like, I don't know, if you can't make a podcast, this is very exciting and inspiring stuff. Like, this is something to, you know, to end on a happy note. Like, this is something that's really, like, particularly inspiring to me, and I think it will be to a lot of people. Especially, like, it's one of those things where your enjoyment of the thing is definitely enhanced by, like, learning more, and that's kind of why I wanted to do this podcast, and just for my own personal enjoyment and for Michael's as well. Like, I got a lot out of this game. I really recommend it. I think it would be great on Nintendo Switch, because it's just like you can hop in, hop out, do a level. You know, very great for the traveling type of thing. But you can easily play it on your laptop, and it doesn't require the craziest graphics card ever. If you have Windows 98, like I said, or Michael said, you can probably play this game.
Yeah,